Hello everyone. Am I audible?
Yes.
Navid, can you please confirm?
Yes, you are audible.
Yes.
Okay, great. So I welcome you to this course, Cybersecurity Engineering with AI. Today is the second class. We had the first class yesterday. I can see there are two students maybe joining newly in this session, Abra and Srinath. So can you please introduce yourself, like what you are doing? Are you engaged in any kind of profession or you are students? If you have any background on the cybersecurity or anything, so that I can accommodate accordingly.
I'm Abraham. The last time I introduced, maybe you forgot me.
No, I didn't forget. Abra,
I
right?
already introduced myself the last time.
Yes, I know. Srinath is there. Srinath was in the last class.
Hi, I wasn't in last class.
Okay. Odhikari, right.
Yeah, I do not have much technical background. I just have a help desk analyst experience of 1.5 year. It's a long back. Now I don't do any IT work. I have a bachelor's in information system. That's all.
Okay, great. No worries. So let me share my screen first. Can someone please confirm whether my screen is visible or not?
Yes, visible, we can see it.
Visible.
Oh, great. So during the last class, we had the basic understanding on the risk assessment, the CIA triad, and etc. So we will be starting from the next step of from the last class, and we'll be continuing the risk assessment thing. So we have already known that risk assessment is nothing but some process and procedures so that we can understand the risk posture of the organization. We had a discussion that vulnerability assessment and risk assessment is the two separate activities, and vulnerability assessment may work as an input for the risk assessment. The one dilemma is many security professionals think that every risk has to be addressed and every risk has to be mitigated, or every risk has to take the necessary steps so that we can mitigate all of those. But the fact is, we cannot, or it is not possible to mitigate all the risks. Rather, what we can do, we can put the best controls or the appropriate controls so that the risk can be mitigated at the minimum level. And at the end of the day, we must have the known risk for our organizations, which needs more attention than the others. Second dilemma is most of us always focus on the technical risks, like what are the risks of the firewall, what are the risks on the encryption things, what are the risks on the server and system sides. Yes, those are necessary, but on top of that, we have to address the business, because all the activities are running to save and secure the business. If we are failed to secure and save the business, risk assessment security thing is nothing. Without the business, this has no activities, and we cannot survive if business fails. So our ultimate objective is to secure the business in such a way so that the known risks are addressed properly, and there shall be no big surprises we have to face to mitigate the incidents. Having said that, we have some basics of building security program, because every security program has their risk management activities and senior management has to be involved in the process, because top to bottom approach is the only thing that can be done by the risk manager to mitigate the risk and to take appropriate controls in favor of the business so that we can have the proper controls to mitigate the business. For that reason, we have different type of risk management approach, and we apply those things while calculating the risks. Before diving into the different type of risk assessment, let us understand what is risk appetite. Risk appetite is the threshold that the organization is willing to take to address a risk. For example, if the risk appetite is 5.0, then we can accept the risk which will have the value of 5.0. Beyond that, that is, if it is greater than the risk appetite value, then it is unacceptable by the board and by the management, and hence we have to put some controls to mitigate those risks. So in short, risk appetite is the calculated mathematical value which is acceptable by the organization in case of putting some controls to mitigate those risks. We have already discussed that all the vulnerabilities may not be fixed, and total risk assessment or total risk management is not about to mitigate or mitigate all the risk. It is not possible. Rather, what we do, we put our best effort, we put the best controls to mitigate the risk at the minimum level, so that organization can be running continuously despite of having the risk and all those things. One more thing, many of the professional things that risk assessment is the checklist based compliance, but this is not the checklist based compliance. Rather, this is the analytical value which needs to be derived from the or following the some industry best practices as well as the risk frameworks. We have already discussed that we have some risk frameworks like NIST, ISO, all those things. This is kind of just refreshing the last class, that if we do not have any kind of risk, there should be no threat, there should be no vulnerabilities. So if there is no risk, if there is no threat, if there is no vulnerabilities, there is no point to assess any risk. We are assessing risk to find out if there is any financial loss, if there is any kind of loss on privacy, or is reputation is at stake, or any kind of regulatory or legal implications, even if it is directly related to our life, because life is the most precious and valuable thing in this world. Therefore, risk can be calculated by the two terms. One is threat multiplied vulnerability, and another one is impact multiplied by probability. That is probability multiplied by impact. So we have two equations. One is threat multiplied vulnerability, and one is impact multiplied by probability. So we will be following the risk equal to probability multiplied by impact thing. While we are doing any kind of risk management practice, we have to have the buy-in from the senior leadership. That is why we call it as top-to-down approach. So because without this senior leadership, security strategy cannot be implemented. Based on the security strategy, we have to make the policy, roles and responsibilities, security administration, user management, asset management, and supporting programs. Now, if the top of the management is not willing to define any kind of security strategy based on which our entire risk management program shall be portrayed, therefore it would not be possible, or it would be very difficult to implement the risk management culture in the organization. Therefore, buy-in of the senior leadership is the most important thing in the whole ecosystem. Now, let us focus on the how this risk assessment or risk management thing can help us, or how the security program is helping us by identifying the risk and all those things. You might have heard the word threat modeling. So threat modeling is the procedure for optimizing application system or business process security by identifying objectives and vulnerabilities. That is, throughout this risk management process, we will be conducting the threat modeling. And this threat modeling does not define only the technical thing, but also the business aspects. For example, if you have any kind of retail business, there might be risk in the market. That is, your product may not be acceptable by the consumers. This is a business risk. From the technical side, you might have designed the product in such a way so that the product program guideline fails to validate in the system in such a way so that it creates zero value. That is there is no value realization. And this threat modeling is not only defining based on the technical aspect, but also it takes the input from the business leaders. It is very much important to understand that if we do not have any weakness, and if that weakness has no exploit, then there is no point of calculating the risk. We are calculating the risk because every ICT has its value, and if it fails, we may give a big price pertaining to the business. And almost every day, organizations are spending their time to identify and mitigate those risks by implementing the appropriate and proper controls. But one thing to remember, cost of the control must not exceed the cost of the asset. That is, if we have an asset which cost us $10, and if the cost if the value of the cost is $20, then this control is not appropriate to safeguard the asset. So our ultimate objective is to secure our assets from the unauthorized users and make the authorized users to access all the assets as per the organization's policy, process, and procedure. While conducting the risk assessment, we have to understand the due diligence. What is due diligence? Due diligence means proper or required. That is, if we discuss on the legal context, it is the degree of care required in a given situation. That is, you are an information security professional and you are not performing your duty by identifying the proper risks and mitigating those with the proper controls. We'll be learning those things very shortly, how to identify the risk and how to implement proper controls. So this due diligence is very much important. And for the decision making, it is very much important that we try to remediate required vulnerabilities or weakness. Now, let me put you an example. In my career, I have faced a lot of situations where I have to prepare the risk register and to present it to the board or the management to make them understand what are the known risks of the organization on the different aspects. Whenever my team has worked to identify any kind of issues or points, we always try to connect that issue with the business. For example, organization is running the applications which are accessible over the internet. Now it is very much obvious that encryption has to be implemented in the web applications so that it can transmit the communications, or it can communicate between the server and the client in such a way so that the whole communication must be encrypted, and therefore we have to implement some certificates, digital certificates or HTTPS certificates, and many other things. Now the problem is sometimes we find that TLS version 1.1 is enabled or TLS version 1.0 is enabled, although TLS 1.2 and 1.3 is also enabled. So why these versions are important? Because TLS version 1.0 and 1.1, these has the vulnerabilities and weaknesses which can be exploited very easily by the intruders or hackers. Therefore, we need to flag the thing that, look, this internet facing application or web application has the TLS version 1.1 and 1.0 is enabled. So please implement the TLS version 1.2 at least, and it is best to implement the TLS version 1.3. This could be one aspect. At times, we found that user access is not maintaining properly. That is, employees who have left the organization, their user IDs are still active, which should not be, because those separated users can do anything and everything over the web applications if they have access in such a way so that it can damage their reputation, or if that is a financial application, they can do the unsolicited transactions. So although these are the technical things that user access is not reviewed accordingly or user access is not managed properly for the separated employees, but we have to raise these issues to the management to make them understand that this has the potential impact with the business. Therefore, we do this with due diligence and we facilitate the management and the board to make the possible best decision so that we can implement the proper controls to mitigate the risk. Any question until now?
No.
Great. One of the most important thing is the password lockout policy. Let us discuss a few lines on this. So can anyone say why this password lockout policy is important and how it is related with the business? Anyone? Okay. Yes, anyone is trying to say something?
I'm not sure, but if there is a sorry, no, I'm not sure about the answer. Sorry.
No worries. So Rowling, if you have any concern on this?
You mean this picture?
I'm saying that what is the aspect of password lockout policy pertaining to the risk assessment and how it is connected with the business?
Well,
Any,
I was a little bit distracted though, but I'm so
Um,
sorry about that. Yeah, so I might not be able to give you exact answers. Sorry.
no worries. No worries.
so like hacker, they can do many times, multiple attempts of trying to access the system. Like with the lockout policy, if it's not the actual user, usually people don't do many attempts of accessing the system. If you have passport lockout system, the many attempts, they can manage the risks.
Okay. So yes, you have rightly pointed out the main risk for not having the password lockout policy is we are making our web application vulnerable to the intruders or hackers in such a way so that they can make many attempts as they want to compromise the application. And if they're able to compromise that application, this may lead to the reputational loss and financial loss. Therefore, we implement this password lockout policy in the applications, in the system, in the server, so that unauthorized attempt of login can be identified immediately and we can take the appropriate controls. The most important feature of password lockout policy is to block the user after having some multiple attempts, for example, maybe 3 times or maybe 5 times, so that multiple attempts can be blocked. And there are many rules on the password lockout policy, but the main thing is we want to block any unauthorized attempts to log into the system. Many of the leaders in the organization may think that security is not an investment. Rather, they treat this as a cost center. They think that IT professionals who are working in the specific department or division, they are expanding or make the budget so big in such a way so that the organizations has to expense on those things. But rather, the expenditure modality, if we can bring the management in the same umbrella that look, this is not an expenditure, rather this is the investment for your organization to secure your business. And that is why we need to conduct the security assessment in a regular basis and present this to the management so that they can make the informed decision. And perception can be changed through the risk assessment result, because that risk assessment result will focus on the risk issues as well as the burning issues which needs to be mitigated immediately. Otherwise, the business can face tremendous failovers. Another thing is, before buying any kind of security products, the return on investment is the most important thing for the management to understand. If they purchase any kind of or any sort of security product, how much return they shall get for this investment, and what would be the time frame to have this investment back to their business. That is, management will be thinking of like a businessman, that if I buy a product, how it will be it will be added to my bucket so that it can add some value to my organization. Otherwise, the management shall not allow any budget to purchase any sort of technical thing. Therefore, it is our duty to make the management understand and to allocate budget in such a way so that we can buy the security appliances or security products so that we can implement those in the ICT environment to mitigate any kind of or any perceived or identified or known issues. Whenever we say risk assessment, we have three type of assessment. One is qualitative, one is quantitative, and another one is semi-quantitative. Whenever we say qualitative analysis, we have the subjective matter to identify each of those risks as well as to quantify those risks as high, medium, or low. Let me show you an example so that you can understand this qualitative assessment. Let me reshare my screen first. Let me share my whole screen so that I think my screen is visible. Is it readable from your end?
It's kind of very little dots, but it's fine.
Okay. Is it okay now?
It's okay. I can zoom in.
Yes.
So let us solve a problem through the qualitative analysis. And we will walk through all the process or all the necessary steps to identify the risks based on this demo problem and to make you understand how these things work. I'm taking an example of imaginary ABC bank, but one more thing, this is a practical scenario. I just renamed those things so that we can have a concrete or solid case study. So let us read it first and identify what we need to do for assessing the risk. So there is a bank called ABC Bank, which is a trusted institution. It has many high value assets. It has many high value assets ranging from interest calculation system. That is, as we know, every bank has its own system which needs to be calculate its interest for performing any kind of transactions. Customer PII is personally identifiable information. That is any information that can be possible to regenerate the records to identify any person. For example, your social security number, your ID card number, your license number, your address, etc. To consumer financial data and reputation. Okay, this example focuses only on one asset because we'll not take many assets for the simplicity. Because if we take many assets, it will be difficult for you to understand the core understanding. So we'll be taking one asset known as consumer financial data, such as account number, account balance, and transaction history. So from the first paragraph, we have understood that the ABC Bank, we are taking only one high value asset, which is interest calculation system. It holds the personally identifiable information of the customer, such as account number, account balance, and transaction history. The risk assessment process is triggered by compliance checkpoint requirement. Every bank has its own compliance team, which requires the risk assessment results so that projects can be sponsored by the CFO or the Chief Financial Officer. At the kickoff meeting, a risk management team is formed, consists of CFO is the sponsor because CFO shall disburse a required budget to conduct the risk assessment with the decision maker on resource prioritization and allocation. Why CFO? Because we have already learned that it needs to be top to bottom approach. Since CFO is one of the core member of the top management and this role is responsible to sponsor the required requirements to conduct the whole process or whole project. Therefore, we can understand that this project may have a positive impact on the organization. VP is the Vice President of Consumer Service, is the asset owner. Any asset must have its asset owner and asset custodian. So asset owner is the department, division, or any entity who holds that asset. That is for any kind of issues, the responsibility goes to the asset owner. And another thing is asset custodian. For this interest calculation system, asset owner is the customer service, because they are dealing with the customer directly and they are using this system to meet any kind of financial needs by the customers. And the IT is the custodian, because this system must be in a good condition so that it can maintain the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the system. So these are the owner and the custodian. Who owns the consumer financial data and provides the asset classification and value estimation. So this asset classification is associated with the asset register. Whenever we have multiple assets or many assets, we have to classify those assets according to the asset classification. And this asset classification is defined through a established policy, process, and procedure. Based on those policy, process, and procedures, we classify those assets with critical, high, medium, low, or with the associated criticality, so that we can identify whether this asset is valuable to the organization or not, and what is the degree of requirement to implement the proper controls so that any abrupt situation can be handled properly. And value estimation. Assume we take the information security professional role, who is responsible for identifying threat, because as we understand, if there is no threat, if there is no vulnerability, there is no risk. And if there is no risk, there is no point of any control. Estimating the likelihood. Likelihood is the probability. Likelihood is the probability it is the probability of happening any kind of abrupt situation, and magnitude of the impact. If any bad thing happens, what would be the impact of the asset? And this likelihood and impact is required to calculate the risk, because as per the risk equation, we have to multiply this likelihood with the impact. IT engineering team manager is also part of the assessment team, who is responsible for providing information regarding vulnerability, existing control, and evaluation of the effectiveness. Later, he is also responsible for cost-benefit analysis and risk mitigation phase. So the risk management team meet with CFO and confirm that the scope of the risk assessment is solely on one asset, consumer financial data. So this is the only one asset, and we need to identify the risk or quantify risk based on the qualitative assessment for this asset only. That is stored in the internal database server within ABC Bank firewall. Okay. The data in transit is not in the scope of this exercise. So any encryption mechanism is out of scope pertaining to the data transit. Later, the team also confirmed with the VP Consumer Service, the asset owner, the consumer financial data is a high business impact. That is, based on the discussion with the VP of Consumer Services, we identified that this is a very high business impact if any unsolicited event occurs. That is, we have this impact now. Asset class across the CI properties. So HBI is high business information. Asset class across all CIS. This is the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So whenever we try to identify any kind of risks, any kind of impact, any kind of likelihood, we always focus on this CIA, that is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Hence, we are only using one class HBI to represent all the asset class. This example here focus only on the threat of a loss of integrity of consumer financial data. So for this entire example, we are taking the integrity. We are not considering the confidentiality and availability. Rather, we are focusing on the integrity only for this consumer financial data. So have we understood the case or this sample problem? Any question on this? Are we good to go?
No question.
No question. Okay. So let us move forward then. Now, the first step is to identify the threat and then the vulnerability, because while assessing the risk, these are the key points we need to identify. So these are the sample questions usually discussed with the asset owner, asset custodian, and the business, so that we can have the common understanding. So the question was that what is you are afraid of or are trying to avoid integrity related threat. That is, what is the integrity? Integrity is the basic property which ensures that if we send any information 2 plus 2 equal to 4 from the sending side, the receiving party must have the same value, that is 2 plus 2 equal to 4. If the 2 plus 2 equal to 4 received by the receiving party, but it is modified as 3 plus 1, then we say the integrity of that information has been compromised. Therefore, we wanted to understand what is the threat pertaining to integrity for our case. And as per the answer, this may have the unauthorized access to consumer data through theft or financial advisor credential. So why this financial advisor credential? Because this financial advisor credential may sharing his or her password with peers, or the existing financial advisor may already have left the organization. So therefore, there is a possibility for the unauthorized access. Now, the second question is, should be, if you want to identify the vulnerability, so how this threat will occur? We want to understand, okay, fine, we have the threat identified that unauthorized access may happen, but we want to know how this is possible, because we need to understand the vulnerability. So this is possible because maybe it is possible to have the credential of financial advisor by other means, or this may be possible through the LAN. Why? Because in the LAN, usually encryption is not implemented, or if it is implemented in such a way so that it can be visible by the other employees or the technical staff. Even sometimes we have identified that although the credential is stored with the hash value, but that hash value is not up to the mark. That is, the organization use the legacy hash algorithm like MD5, and this MD5 has the built-in mechanism to reverse the hash to the plain text. Ideally, hash is the one-way function. That is, there is no way so that we can reverse that hash. But MD5 SHA-1, this has the vulnerability to reverse the hash to the plain text. Therefore, it may be possible to have the credentials of the financial advisor technically and non-technically. Also, this could be possible to have the credential of the financial advisor due to the outdated security configuration. As I have mentioned earlier, that the MD5 or SHA-1 is the legacy or outdated security configuration to make the hash of the credential and store this to the relevant database. This is a simple asset register. Before doing any kind of risk assessment, we have to have a asset register, and this is a very simple asset register. Usually, every organization has its own asset register with the classification of asset, including the asset owner, asset custodian, and many other information. For the simplicity, we have considered the asset name, asset type, asset classification, asset owner, and asset custodian. I'm sorry, there is an typo error. This is critical, so I'm sorry for that. This is the unwanted mistake from my side. I will be correcting this before sharing with you. So this consumer financial data has the asset type of financial data. Asset is classified as critical, which has the high business impact, because if you can remember, we have already identified this as the high business impact. Therefore, we mark this as high business impact or HBI. Asset owner is the VP consumer service and custodian is the technology. Now, this is the ultimate table through which we can able to identify or quantify the risk. For example, this is serial number 1. This is threat ID. We have, for each threat, we must have a threat ID. For each threat ID, we may have more than one vulnerability, and those vulnerability must have the unique ID. These are the exposure level, existing controls. What are the existing controls to mitigate the risk? What is the likelihood and what is the impact rating? This likelihood and impact rating has been outplayed based on the our assumption, since this is a demo case, but in real life, this likelihood and impact rating is considered based on the interview with the asset owner, asset custodian, and with the related or relevant stakeholders, so that this has been portrayed or recorded accurately. Now let's explore one by one. So this is threat ID, for example, T1. What is the threat? The threat was the unauthorized access to consumer data through theft of financial advisor credential. This is the vulnerability. What are the vulnerabilities? Theft of financial advisor credential of remote or mobile host as a result of outdated, because we have the outdated security configuration or and this could be led to the remote compromise, theft of financial advisor credential, offline host through the use of outdated security configuration, of antivirus signatures, host configuration. Okay, the main thing is these are coming from the technical part, that is outdated components in the server side, the LAN is not managed properly, ABC Bank employees abuse. So this is a completely non-technical part. That is, if the credential of financial advisor is shared with the peers, then it is very much possible to abuse that ID. And if so, it would be very difficult for us to find out the actual uh, person who have done it. And this is the man in the middle attack. So except 1, 2, and 4, this is a completely non-technical issue. The point I want to make very clear over here is whenever we are performing the assessment pertaining to likelihood and impact, we take all the vulnerabilities considering the business and technology. Otherwise, this shall be a half-done thing, and your proper output shall not be portrayed in your ultimate risk register. And these are the existing controls. For example, what we have done, Windows is updated, there is email, antivirus update, configuration standard, group policies update on 1, etc. So we have some existing controls over here to mitigate all these vulnerabilities so that this threat can be managed if it triggers. And as we know, we have two kind of possibilities. One is proactive and one is reactive. Proactive is basically whenever we will be doing our best effort to protect our ICT assets from any unwanted situation. And the reactive is whenever anything happens, it could be problem, it could be incident, whenever anything happens, we shall put our best effort to make our business run in a new normal situation. Now, based on each vulnerability, we have this likelihood rating and this impact rating. Whenever we try to mark this likelihood and impact rating, we must have understand that we may portray our entire thing either this 3x3 matrix or 4x4 matrix or 5x5 matrix. That is, if we have the likelihood of high, moderate, and low, then this high, moderate, low must be the same. That is, this must be equal matrix, 3x3, 4x4, 5x5. But we cannot build a matrix like 3x4 or 5x6. So this cannot be done. The matrix must be equal. Therefore, we are taking 3 rating, high, medium, and low. Now, moving forward, this is the impact and likelihood. We have the high, medium, low impact rating. If we go back, high, medium, low impact rating and likelihood is the high, medium, low. Now, for the qualitative judgment or qualitative analysis, we have a direct calculation. For example, this high and high shall make this high, high and medium is high, high and low is medium. That is, in between high and medium, anything is high will be treated as high. And this high and low becomes the medium. So this medium and high, as we have know that this high and medium shall make this high, medium and medium is medium, low and medium is low. high and low is medium, medium and low is low, low and low is low. So have we understood until now? Or is this is clear to you how we are getting this likelihood and impact table? Is there any confusion? Should I repeat once again?
No confusion.
No confusion or there is a confusion?
No confusion.
Okay, great.
Uh,
Anyone is trying to say something?
yeah, just a quick question. This impact and likelihood, like low, high, medium thing, it's just like a formula thing we have to remember, or just
No, you don't have to. You don't have to. You you just try to understand this table. You don't have to memorize, because if you try to memorize, you will forget everything. So try to think of logically this likelihood and impact rating table, because anything is high will be treated as high. Whenever it is coming with low or medium, we are treating this high and low with medium. Medium and low is always low. Low, medium, and low, low is always low. So this is a very much logical table. If you have done any sort of truth table, or if you have the opportunity to have the digital signal course in your undergrad, so you might have familiarity with this, but if not, there is no problem. This is nothing connected with your undergrad or master's course, if you have those, but these are completely related with the logical reasoning. Anything is high will be treated as high. Anything medium with medium will be treated as medium. And you may ask one thing, how we are defining this high, medium, and low? We are defining this high, medium, and low based on the likelihood and impact rating to quantify each of these vulnerabilities. And these vulnerabilities are defined by the technical team as well as by the business team. That is, being a risk professional, our job is to conduct a discussion with the appropriate and related stakeholders so that we can identify each vulnerabilities and we can relate those vulnerabilities with the likelihood and impact. And based on this likelihood and impact, we are making this table. And this is a logical table in such a way so that we can have this high, medium, and low. Yes.
um, this kind of right, like in a real life work, you we do have like a ticketing system, right? Like
Yes.
making
Whenever you raise a ticket, you have to define the criticality and the impact of that ticket, right? So that that ticket becomes high, medium, or low. Just to know, have you used Manage Engine or any other else?
no, first time here.
No, no. Have you used a ticketing system as Manage Engine or anything else?
Um,
ServiceNow is
something.
there, Manage Engine is there. Okay, great. So whenever you try to raise any ticket on the Manage Engine, on the ServiceNow, or any kind of uh, ticketing system, you will have this likelihood and impact whenever any user raises a ticket. And based on that likelihood and impact rating, the ultimate ticket shall be marked as the high, medium, or low. The same thing is here. So after this high and impact rating, and after having this table, now if we relate this thing, that is high and high, will make this high. Medium and high shall connected with this high thing. Low, medium, or low, low will be treated as low. So this is the ultimate risk rating table based on which we shall be able to present to the management, look, we have these threat, these vulnerabilities with these ratings, and please guide us. Should we mitigate those risks, or what would be the risk mitigation planning? After having the buy-in of the necessary stakeholders along with the management, we then step up for the next level to implement the proper mitigation control. And this is the ultimate objective of the risk rating. And based on this risk rating, we construct the risk register, which is the ultimate objective of the risk management process. So any question until now from the beginning of this demo case study till finding of the risk rating? I know this would be first time for you. This would be a bit difficult for you, but if you can say that whether you are okay with this or not, I shall be able to guide you accordingly.
Oh yeah, this is good understanding. Just curious about some these kind of questions comes in interviews, like a scenario based, like something like similar kind of questions comes or no?
Okay, great. So I know those things. So that is why I will try to make you understand all the concepts in this cybersecurity engineering throughout some small case studies, so that this will be preparing you for the interview questions as well as to solve the problems whenever you are tasked with any kind of activities. So I guess we are quite okay with this example, right?
Yes.
Okay. Before going to the next exercise or next topic, let us have a 5 minute short break. So I guess this is completely fine with you, right?
Yes, we can come back 5 minutes.
Yes, we will be coming back exactly after 5 minutes. Have we come back?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. Let us move forward. Let us move forward. So this is the qualitative assessment. So please remember, whenever we do any kind of assessment, we always consider the CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability properties, because all these assessments have been conducted to some extent or by having the common understanding that there is something on the CIA part, and we need to mitigate any kind of risk issues which may impact the assets. So we have understood the qualitative issues, how we assess any assessment based on the qualitative method. Now we are moving to the quantitative analysis methodology. So what is quantitative methodology, or what are the difference between the qualitative and quantitative analysis? In case of quantitative analysis, we have to quantify in terms of dollar value, in terms of some mathematical calculations. So to understand all those things, we need to understand this asset value, exposure factor, single loss of expectancy, annual rate of occurrence, annual loss expectancy, total cost of ownership, and return on investment. Let us have these definitions one by one in a very simple way. Asset value is the straightforward thing. That is, it is the dollar figure that represents the asset which is worth to the organization. That is, if we buy a firewall and this firewall cost us, for example, $100K, then this is the asset value for that firewall. Exposure factor is the percentage of loss that is expected if any kind of risk event occurs. That is, if that firewall is affected by the denial of service or distributed of denial of service attack, what would be the percentage that we are expecting that this firewall will not work in the production system. Single loss of expectancy is the dollar figure that represents the cost of a single occurrence of a threat instance. That is, if any threat occurs only once, what would be the dollar figure for that event? That is what we shall lose in terms of dollar figure. ARO is referring to the annual rate of occurrence, that how often the threat shall occur yearly. That is, if the denial of service attack is perceived to our environment in a year, or what would be the frequency this could happen or materialized. That is, this is calculated annually. For example, if we perceive that this DOS or DDoS shall be occurring twice in a year, so therefore we calculate this ARO ARO as 2 divided by 12. If it is once in a year, that is 1 divided by 12. So this is ARO, annual rate of occurrence. ALE is the annual loss expectancy, that is cost per year as a result of the threat. That is what is the dollar value we shall be losing in case of any kind of threat. TCO is the total cost of ownership. This is the total cost of implementing a safeguard. That is, if we implement any kind of control, what would be the cost? In addition to the cost, we need to understand, is there any maintenance fee as well? For example, to mitigate the DOS and DDoS attack, we may buy a anti-DDoS protection appliance. Whenever we try to buy the appliance, we have to buy the appliance as well as the maintenance fee. And we have already discussed on the return on investment, that is the amount of money saved by implementing of a safeguard, sometimes referred to as the value of the safeguard or control. So these are the core component whenever we are trying to calculate it, to calculate any kind of quantitative assessment. Any question on this? So let us go through once more. Asset value is the figure on the USD and all those things. Okay. Let us portray some demo problems. Assume that your company has 500 systems that contain personally identifiable information. You need to convince management of need to implement controls to secure customer information. Though the systems cost $20,000 a piece, the value of the laptop is 10,000. 8,000 for the potentially exposed PI. 10,000 is the asset value for each resource. Over the past 10 years, we have suffered a total of 30 compromises. There is already a control in place that provides limited protection. Currently, in the event that an attack compromises the confidentiality of this information, 75% of data will be compromised. So what's going on over here? Assume your company has 500 systems. That is, we have total 500 assets. All these contains the personally identifiable information. Our job is to convince management of the need to implement controls to secure customer information. That is, we want to secure this personally identifiable information, and we need to buy something to protect this information from exposing. Though the systems cost 2,000 a piece, that is, every system has the $2,000 cost. The true value of the laptop is 10,000. Why? Because 8,000 for the potentially exposed PII, that is 8,000 for the personal identifiable information, and 2,000 is the cost of the control. So this makes total 10,000, and this is the asset value. Over the past 10 years, we have suffered a total 30 compromises. That is, this personal identifiable information has been compromised 30 times. There is already a control in place that provides limited protection. That is, we do not have any concrete protection. Rather, we have some controls which can be protected from these kind of events partially. Currently, in the event that an attack compromises the confidentiality of the information, 75% of data will be compromised. That is, if this happens, confidentiality shall be compromised by 75%. Now, what would be the solution? We have understood that asset value is the value of the asset, that is, this 10,000 is the asset value. As we know, the single loss expectancy, to calculate the single loss expectancy, we have to multiply the asset value with exposure factor. So we have found this exposure factor from here, that is, currently in the event that an attack compromises the confidentiality of this information, 75% of data will be compromised. That is, there is a chance for losing the data, and which is 75%. So this is the exposure factor. To identify the single loss expectancy, or SLE, we have to multiply this asset value, that is 10,000, with the exposure factors, which is 75%. And therefore, the SLE is 7,500. Now, the ARO, annual rate of occurrence. There are 30 compromises over 10 years, I guess. Where is that? Yes. Over the past 10 years, we have suffered a total of 30 compromises. That is, number of compromises divided by year evaluated, it becomes 3. We have 30 compromises past 10 years. So annually, it will be happened 3 times. The annual loss expectancy is currently, so this ALE, to find out this ALE or annual loss expectancy, we have to multiply this SLE with ARO, that is these 3. So if we multiply the $7,500 with these 3, the resulting value is the $22,500. So this is the ultimate annual loss expectancy from the given scenario. Any question on this? What we are doing, why we are doing, how we are doing these things? Do I need to repeat this once more?
Not really. For me, I kind of understand what you were explaining. I understand the impact of in the business and all of the stuff. I just need to digest it one more time. So if as soon as I get the materials, I'm going to study.
Yes, you have to study these things once more so that you can grasp all the necessary things. Let us move forward. Now, as an homework, there are 2 problems. There are 2 problems with solution. So what you do, you go through all these lectures once more and try to solve these 2 scenarios. These will help you out to understand the complete scenario for calculating the quantitative analysis. So are we good on this?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. So I'll be sharing these yesterday's and today's lecture to you. So I have requested all of you to share your Gmails so that I can share my entire folder with you to have all the workings throughout this course. So I have only 5 emails. So I'll be requesting once more to all of you to share your emails to the group. It will be a great help for me. So having said that, I think we have, yes, class is not finished yet. We have another round to understand another things. So any question on this quantitative and qualitative analysis? Okay, great. We have, okay, before dive into this, so is it visible for you all?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the same example that we have done for, we have the solution, or we have analyzed for the qualitative assessment. Now we are going to solve this problem or case study using the semi-quantitative approach. So we have understood the qualitative approach, quantitative approach. Now this is the third approach. This is called a semi-quantitative approach. That is, we have the qualitative approach, we have the quantitative approach. Now we are combining these 2 methodology to solve a specific problem, which is known as the semi-qualitative approach. So quantitative, sorry, not qualitative, semi-quantitative approach. So this is the most viable and most applicable methodology for assessing the risk and to make the proper risk register. So now there is some changes on this solution, on this problem. Now we know, while doing with the qualitative assessment, the problem was this much. Now we have added this paragraph, that is, Later, the team also confirmed with VP of Customer Service, the asset owner, the consumer financial data with probability of occurrence, determine the risk rating considering the CIA property. Thus, the risk score CIA may be between 1 to 5. Now, what we are doing? Now, since this is the semi-quantitative approach, we'll be now quantify the likelihood and impact value with mathematical values. That is, we will be mark the likelihood from 1 to 5. 1 is the minimum value and 5 is the maximum value, as well as for the impact from 1 to 5. And if you can remember, a while ago I have said that whenever we try to quantify the likelihood and impact, we have to consider the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Therefore, we are quantifying the likelihood and impact based on the CIA, and considering the qualitative approach, we are marking this 1 to 5 as very high, high, medium, and low. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 to 5. 1 is missing, so I think I have missed one. Let me check. No, I didn't miss anything. Okay, great. So this likelihood impact between 1 to 5 and risk ranking, high, very high, high, medium, and low. Now let us see how we can accommodate these things while assessing the risk. I repeat, you don't have to memorize anything. Whenever you have a problem, whenever you want to quantify the risk assessment or you want to perform the risk assessment, just have this idea, try to understand the concepts so that these you can apply this to your organization or whenever you facing any kind of interviews. Now we have the probability determination and impact determination. These are the paragraphs which we have written. The derived probability rating that a potential vulnerability may exercised within the construct of the associated threat environment. The following governing factors must be considered. Threat source motivation. We have already known that there is a threat for every vulnerabilities, nature of the vulnerability, and existence, the effectiveness of current controls. So we must consider these three things while defining the probability. And in the case study, we have already mentioned this CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. We have the probability rating from 1 to 5, and as description, now this is the mathematical value, and now we are trying to map these values with the descriptive features, like 1 is the rare, 2 is unlikely, 3 is possible, 4 is likely, and 5 is almost certain. These are the definitions for why we are saying this rare, why we are saying this unlikely, why we are saying this possible, why we are saying this likely. So for each of these description, we must have a detailed understanding. So this is called the probability of occurrences or probability of occurrence. So why we saying it rare? Because it is highly unlikely, but it may occur in exceptional circumstances. It could happen, but probably never will. And why it is almost certain? This is very likely the event is expected to occur in most circumstances, as there is a history of regular occurrences at similar institutions. So remember the ARO, annual rate of occurrence. This is basically the history of regular occurrence. That is, for any event, if we have any kind of historical value, then we can map this as almost certain. But for this case, these ratings, description, probability of occurrence, may differ pertaining to the different scenarios. So this is the probability of occurrence. Same goes for the impact determination. Now, if you can see, we have the rating, we have the description, insignificant, minor, moderate, major, and catastrophic. But now we have the financial values. For these financial values, you have to concern with the CFO or the financial and administration team. You have to have discussion with the management team as well as with the business and technology team to identify the financial impact. We cannot say any financial impact without having any discussion with the relevant authorities and the management. Based on this financial impact, we portray this business interruption and reputation and image. So what could be the business interruption and what could be the reputation image? So these are quantified based on the discussion, based on the asset register, and based on the management intent. Once we have the probability determination and impact determination, then we will move next to have this simple asset register. So if you look, this is the pretty same as before, the simple asset register, but the calculation is kind of difference. Now we have to identify the risk score calculation and risk rating. So we are now at third step. So during the first step, we have identified the probability. On the second step, we have identified the impact. On third step, we are identifying the risk score calculation and risk rating. We have quantified the business impact from 1 to 5 and quantified the likelihood or probability from 1 to 5. Now we will make this risk matrix. How? Again, we put the impact values over here, and likelihood values over here. That is horizontally and vertically. Now we multiply each of these. 1 multiplied by 1 is 1, 1 multiplied by 2 is 2, 1 multiplied by 3 is 3, and so on. For example, if we take this 3 multiplied by 1 is 3, 3 multiplied by 2 is 6, 3 multiplied by 3 is 9, 3 multiplied by 4 is 12, 3 multiplied by 5 is 15, and so on. So this is the risk matrix. Now note that we have 1 to 5, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have total maximum value is 5, minimum value is 1. So we have, in total, we have 5. And if you see, our maximum value is 25 and minimum value is 5. Now we have to make these values in such a way so that we can match these 5 steps. That is, we have to make the calculation in such a way so that we can fit in according to this probability and impact determination. Therefore, we will be treat this as very low if it is 1 to 5, because we are segregating these 25 values with a difference of 5. That is 1 to 5, 6 to 9, 10 to 15, 16 to 20, and 21 to 25. This is very high, medium, low, and very low. So this is the risk rating value. Any confusion until now?
No.
No. Okay, great. Now this is the risk register. So we have understood this threat value, vulnerability, exposure level, risk originator. Now, if you can see, this likelihood is 4, impact rating is 5. So we have put these values arbitrarily. But in real life, you have to discuss with the concerned risk owner, asset owner, with the management team and business to put these values, because these values shall be multiplied with each other to identify this risk rating value. For example, if we multiply this 4 with 5, this becomes 20. If this is 20, then this is a high risk. And a high risk means that a threat at event could be expected to have a severe or catastrophic adverse effect. Therefore, identify these values very carefully so that you have the accurate risk rating. And based on this risk rating, we will have the risk priority, which is high, medium, and low. Based on these risks, we can identify what are the existing controls so that we can have the ultimate risk register. And therefore, this is the semi-quantitative approach for identification of the risks. So we have understood the qualitative approach, quantitative approach, and semi-quantitative approach for assessment of the risk. The last part, we will be covering the return on investment. But before going to the return on investment, if you have any question for any of these three methodology, you can ask. So do you have any question on any of these three methodologies?
I don't have any question. I kind of understand some of these things.
Oh, great. Let me put this example. Yes. Let me navigate to the problem first. Asset value, I guess this thing is here. Just allow me a moment. I'm trying to make this side by side. Yes. So is it readable from your side? Can you read this? Okay. So this is the calculation for return on investment. Before presenting any purchase, or if we want to purchase any control and we need the budget from the management, we usually do the return on investment thing to quantify and to show the management that these controls shall bring the positive impact, or we can have the positive value realization by implementing this control to the environment, and this will benefit the organization in a various way. Therefore, we first understand what would be the cost of the asset before implementing any control. That is, what would be the result or what would be the value of the compromise if we do not have any controls. And if we implement the control, what is the scenario after implementation of that control? So we have two parts of this return on investment. If you remember this problem, while we were discussing the quantitative assessment for the risk, we have this scenario, that is this 10,000, 75% is the exposure factor, 500 systems, $2,000 episode, etc. Now, let us put this in this table. I will be sharing this entire thing with you so that you can put values by yourself and you can calculate accordingly. So asset value, AV1, this is the numeric value. As we know, USD figure represents the value of the asset was $10,000. Exposure factor was 75%. And this is the single loss expectancy. Annualized rate of return is 3 because 30 divided by 10, and annual loss expectancy was 22,500. That is, if we do not implement any control due to not having the appropriate controls, cost per year for a specific threat is $22,500. Now, if we want to buy a control so that threat can be contained in a controlled way, what would be the cost? Now, let us assume that cost of the safeguard, that is to buy the product or to buy the control, is $1,000. But asset value remains the same. Due to this $1,000, the exposure factor is significantly reduced to 60%. Also, this annualized rate of return, or ARO, becomes 1 from 3. That is, this has also been reduced. Logically, the single loss of expectancy and annualized loss of expectancy shall be reduced. Therefore, if we buy the control with this $1,000, and hence the risks are decreasing in a very sharply manner, that is from the 75% exposure factor becomes 60%, this annualized rate of occurrence becomes 1 from 3. Therefore, the annualized loss of expectancy is 6,000. Previously, it was 22,500. Now, what is the value or benefit of safeguard? That is, what is the return on investment? Now we have to deduct this 22,500, deduct this 6,000 from this 22,500, and we will have this 15,500. So here basically reducing the annualized loss of expectancy, that is ALE, by implementing a safeguard which costs only $1,000. Now, if this 1,000 becomes 10,000, what will happen? It is still 6,500. But if it is like 50,000, it is not 50,000. For example, 20,000. 18,000. Sorry, 18,000. 18, 1, 2, 3. 1,500. 16,500. So if the cost of the safeguard becomes 16,500, there is no positive or negative value. That is, return on investment is 0. This is the optimum situation. So we can still decide whether we need this control or not. But if the cost of the control becomes 17,000, this cost of control has the negative value. And as we have discussed, the cost of the control should not be greater than the asset value. And hence, this control is not necessary to contain the threat. Therefore, we always try to have the control if the value of this control is less than the asset, or at least is equal to the asset, so that we do not have any negative value on the return on investment. If the return on investment becomes negative value, then the management and the authority shall not allow us to buy that control and to implement that control in the environment. Also, this is not a viable thing. Therefore, if this cost of control becomes at least, for example, 10,000, still we have 6,500 positive value. That is, we now decide or we can decide that we want to implement this control having the positive value of 6,500. So this is the return on investment and how we usually calculate the return on investment to convince the management. Any question on this?
I don't have any question. Just
No
I need to
question.
study it a little bit. It's a lot of information, and it's just assessment of impact on the business and all of those stuff. This comes with decision making and all of those stuff, and it depends on the business policies and how whatever mission critical application or whatever infrastructure they have. Those are the things that will enable them to make certain kind of decision based on our assessment. I just have to study it. I understand what you were explaining.
Yes, you have to study at least these slides, and you have to review the videos so that you have the complete understanding of this knowledge. And I believe this will help you to face any kind of interviews or any kind of assessments, and you can apply these things to secure your jobs, or even if you want to work as a consultant in many of the organizations like Big Fours. So these are the core concepts for assessing the risks, and this is how actually we assess risks from the practical scenario. Having said that, let me show you just one thing. This is a demo template. This you can use this because this is taken from the Certified in Risk and Information System Control C-Risk study book. So this is a risk register template based on which we try to find out the actual risk register. Based on this input, we shall prepare the risk register, and ultimately this risk register shall be projected to the management to make the informed decisions. This is a pretty straightforward and self-explanatory. Please review this thing, and if you have any kind of question, any kind of or if you need any kind of more understanding, please do let me know in the next class. So this is the end of class for today, and I would like to know if you have any questions, if you have any confusions, even if you have any suggestions that I'm going too fast or I'm going too slow, or you will have some difficulties to follow my lectures, etc.
Yes, risk analysis is kind of, it has a lot of information. You need to, absorb a lot of information to be able to pretty much understand everything the way it's you need to be understood. That being said, a lot of people can be analytical, some people can be technical, and all of those stuff. For me, I just think if we share the materials, people study, they'll be able to know where their strength lies on, and be able to know where to stand on, because it just depends. Like for me, I'm both analytical and technical, so it just depends. So if I get the material, being able to study it, I'll be able to run with it. Thank you.
No worries. Every detail shall be shared with you. I have already requested all of you to share your emails. Please do share your emails, and it will be help me to share the contents with you guys. And who has already shared their emails, I'll be sharing all the contents by today and tomorrow, so that you can have a time to go through all those lectures. I think this will work, right? Okay. So yes, Odhikari.
If we have any like specific questions, like some in future, like homework or anything, we just send it in the group, or like ask you separately on WhatsApp.
Uh, are you connected in the group, in the WhatsApp group
Yes.
created by the Transfer Tech? So do
Yes.
share anything and everything on the group. And if you need any kind of assistance from me, you can text me on WhatsApp. Due to the engagement of my uh, daily life, I may be a bit slow for responding, but I'll try to respond as soon as possible. So don't think that I am not responding to your queries, but due to some engagement, it may be sometimes, not all times, sometimes it may take some time. So I hope this is understandable, and I am always reachable through WhatsApp. You can call me, you can text me, and I'll be happy to answer any kind of confusions of yours.
Okay. Thank you.
So if anyone do not have any questions, queries, or anything, so I'll be concluding today's class. Okay. So thank you so much for attending, and we'll be meet next week, right? Yes, Abra, you are trying to say something?
No, it's just to tell you thank you and good night.
Okay, good night.
Yeah.
Bye bye.
Bye.